Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. Today I wanted to do a discussion video on a topic that kind of comes up a lot in the Power Rangers fandom, especially in the last few years. And that topic is, does the Power Rangers franchise have too much MMPR in it? I mean, probably. Before we get started, I want to remind you guys to like this video if you end up enjoying it, hit the subscribe button and the ring the bell button so you can get notifications for more videos like this and more. Let's get started. So, MMPR is kind of like the season for the franchise. It's the most recognizable between most casual fans. It's the most marketable, so it's easy to see why it's a go-to. And it's been very saturated in the franchise, especially in the last decade or so, ever since Power Rangers came back. And it's definitely become a sticking point in the fandom. I think that it's kind of taking focus away from other seasons, and it's preventing the franchise from moving forward. And I don't disagree. I definitely have my problems with it. Admittedly, just on a personal level, I get sick of it too. You know, I get sick of seeing the same characters and the same designs shoved down our throats, especially since it always seems to be season one. It's like, with MMPR, there was at least 3 seasons, but we only focus on season 1. And it's like, if we're going to focus on MMPR, can we at least branch out a little bit? Like, just like a tiny branch into seasons 2 and 3. I do think that it gets old. I don't get sick of it. You know, I wish that we could branch out into other seasons or come up with new seasons. At the same time, I feel like I try to be a little bit objective and understand why they do it, because as I mentioned, MMPR is the most profitable and recognizable, and in order to stay viable, they kind of have to leave it in the mix. And I understand that, even if it's not what I want personally. And I actually think, while they're not doing a perfect job, I think Hasbro has done a decent-ish job at balancing the MMPR saturation. If I'm being honest, I think the MMPR influence makes me more upset on the Saban side of things for 2 reasons. I mean, number one, I think that Saban just kind of failed at making another season more mainstream popular. I don't necessarily think there ever would have been a season as popular as MMPR. You know, most franchises unfortunately have that Gen 1er experience. There's just something psychologically in humans where we latch onto the first thing and create that nothing beats the original thing. And that unfortunately is a problem in almost every fandom. Nostalgia is truly one of the great human weaknesses, second only to the neck. There's a lot of franchises too that will have other iterations that, while they don't reach the heights of the first generation of whatever it is, are popular enough that they don't only have to rely on like the Gen 1er experience. People like to complain about Pokemon doing that, but I actually think Pokemon's one of the best at catering to Gen 1ers while also pushing forward and creating new iconic things. Unfortunately, it's not just a Power Rangers problem, but I think Saban failed at creating any other iconic eras or attempting to, at least semi-iconic. And then I think that was made worse when the Neo Saban era happened, because that's when a lot of the MMPR fixation started. And even though from Samurai through Ninja Steel, they were their own seasons. It's not like we did MMPR seasons 1 through 10. There was so much MMPR influence. Like with the Go-Go Power Rangers theme, we haven't had an original theme in over a decade. Even using It's Morphin' Time and Go-Go, and until Dino Fury, the soundtrack being an MMPR redux, it's just so backwards. And that almost upset me more. I think especially it was confusing for me during that time, because it's like, this is for the young audience, then who is this MMPR callback stuff for? They're not going to know it. And possibly the thing that upset me the most is why the Go-Go Samurai and Go-Go Mega... Just do It's Morphin' Time. It's fine. Both the Go-Go... That was so stupid. I think that era upset me more because it was kind of weaving its way into things, and I think the MMPR-ness kind of took the identity away from the seasons like Samurai through Ninja Steel and even Beast Morphers. It was prominent in the merchandise too, for everything from the comics to the toys to, for the most part, the niche merchandise. Niche? That I mean like when you see shirts or glasses or keychains, whatever it may be, you're never going to see, or almost never going to see, anything past MMPR, and that's kind of understandable because that's mainly for the casual audience. And we've entered the Hasbro era, in which we have gotten a lot of MMPR merchandise and focus. Not that I don't want to see them spread their wings more, and if it was up to me personally, if I could have it so that there was less MMPR saturation and the brand still did financially well, that would be great. But I totally understand why they do it. Here's why I think they've done a decent job balancing it. Let's talk about merchandise. I mean, with the Lightning Collection being a prime example, there is a lot of MMPR figures and like double dipping and, you know, doing figures that are just kind of variants. Like recently we revealed the Zack and Trini, or not Zack and Trini, excuse me, the Jason and Trini gender swap, Ranger color swap set from the comics. Or stuff like the 50,000 MMPR pink variants, the only person with more variants than Loki. I can understand why people will get disappointed when there's a new Fan Friday and the announcement is yet another MMPR thing from the well. At the same time, I think they actually do a fairly decent job of balancing it. I mean, amongst individual waves, I see why they kind of have to include something familiar. Because they have to sell to the casual fans as well. I think that the fandom, I mentioned this before, and I get a lot of heat for it sometimes, but they tend to focus too much on the hardcore fandom, which is a very small fandom. And I feel like I'm misunderstood when I say this. I'm not talking about the fandom in general being tiny. I'm talking about the hardcore fandom, like the fandom that's watched every season, like Sentai, that goes on Ranger Board, that comes here. That's a smaller fandom than the casual fandom. There's like multiple subsets of the fandom, but there's like the core hardcore fandom, and then there's more of the casual viewer that like watched MMPR when they were younger, maybe watched a couple other seasons. They're not deep into it, so they're the larger group of the bigger fandom that they're trying to capture with stuff like the comics or the toys that they know are going to buy something that's more familiar, so they have to cater to that. But I think that Hasbro's done a decentish job at, you know, balancing the waves with MMPR stuff in other seasons, and even exclusive releases. Like, yeah, we'll get stuff like the Ninja figures or the color swap or cell shaded pink, but we'll also get stuff like A Squad, which I honestly never expected us to get, but maybe it's kind of a bad example because of how inconsistent their quality is. But I didn't expect them to do something like that so soon. So I don't think that they get enough credit for doing, you know, kind of a more rare hardcore fan release alongside the MMPR stuff. The MMPR stuff definitely outweighs it, but they kind of have to do it so that they can pay to be able to come out with the figures they know will be less popular. Of course, you have kind of the collector's items like the replacement for the Legacy line Lightning with the morphers and the weapons, which we've only seen in MMPR. The Zord Ascension project is just starting. As of this recording, it's not even out yet, but it's understandable why they would start with MMPR. My main complaint with that is we're so slow on that. I'm surprised that we haven't tried to dip into more morphers. I assumed the next morpher release was to be probably like Tommy's morpher or the Master Morpher, but then it's this weird MMPR pink release. So that one, you know, the thing with the helmets, I feel like you know that the first batch of releases are going to be more MMPR related, but those have been so slow that I can totally understand why people are upset by that, because there's such a large gap like between the role play releases and the morpher releases, or the rumored ones and then the next one's MMPR. I think it would be nice, I think I mentioned this in a previous video, that once we get rolling to balance it out a little bit more, you know, like the next release would be the Dragon Zord, and then maybe do something else for the Zords, or, you know, next release for the weapon line is like the Power Lance, but then maybe do like the Zeo Gold Power Staff or the Super Silverizer or something. Obviously, the Legacy MMPR releases are going to sell better. Once we get rolling, it would be nice to sprinkle in a little bit something different, because while the Lightning Collection scale dips towards MMPR, we do get stuff like the A Squad or the Psycho Rangers or comic releases or Dino Fury every now and then in between MMPR stuff, and it would be nice to see in the future do that with the other lines. And of course, you have stuff like the comics, which primarily uses Mighty Morphin as the face of it. Also, I would say similarly to the Lightning Collection, I think they do a pretty good job balancing it. You do have the main series revolving around MMPR, but the Power Rangers series is about the Omega Rangers, which is technically MMPR characters, but it's also this very new thing. And for me, so long as the story's good, I'm happy with that. I would absolutely love to see them release comic series based off of new creations or other series that did just as well. But for right now, I understand why they need to sell to the more broader casual audience, and so long as the story's good, I'm happy with that. And I think the comics for me have been honestly fine in that regard, mainly because we do on occasion get individual graphic novels based off of different series and delving into deeper lore, which is like these really nice little treats to expand into other seasons. And then they also will tie it to the main MMPR comic, which I think is really cool. I think the last thing I want to touch on is, as we head into this new era, which is very unknown right now, all we know is that there's a reboot coming up for Netflix that is supposedly going to be an all-new design. You know, it's not going to be based off of MMPR like the 2017 movie or a reimagining. I could totally see them doing something like that down the road. There's a rumored animated series, and I could totally see them in the future doing an animated series based off the Boom Comics, or maybe a Kitty MMPR series or something entirely new MMPR. I think it'll be interesting going in the future because as we head into this new era with the reboot, I get a feeling that, I mean, I don't get a feeling, I'm really confident that MMPR is going to stick around still with the comics or possibly another series because, you know, with them placing some of their bets on the reboot, they're going to want to have a safety net, which is MMPR. And I don't see MMPR merchandise or influence going away anytime soon. And it is unfortunate, and I understand people's frustrations with it, as I'm frustrated as well, but I think we tend to forget that they need to stay financially viable for Power Rangers to survive. And I really wish we could go back in time and make it so that MMPR wasn't the only thing that was recognizable or marketable. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. And at this point in time, I don't see us being able to change that. I really hope that the reboot universe finds a new audience and creates a new level of popularity, but I don't think it'll ever be as recognizable for MMPR. So unfortunately, I think MMPR is always going to be here to stay. I think they could do a better job about balancing it. There's always room for improvement with everything. And as we head into the future, I would love to see them be able to balance it out between other seasons, and new seasons as well, and new designs, both in terms of the merchandise and the show and comics and other entertainment vehicles. I would love to see more of a balance. But as of right now, this isn't me being like a Hasbro defender or anything, but I actually think they're doing kind of a better job than they're given credit for. Like, it definitely leans more MMPR's way, and it could stand to lean a little bit the other way, but I think they do a decent job of giving us some new content in between. It could be far worse. We could be only getting MMPR collectibles and only storylines that stick within MMPR in regards to the comic, but we do have more branches than we realize. So right now, I would say that MMPR, is there too much of it? Yes, I think right now there's a decent balance. I think that they're always going to need it to a degree, unfortunately, but I would like to see them balance it in the future, both in regards to just, I think, it being more personally appealing, but I do think that they run the risk of tiring people out if they lean too far into it. But what do you think? What is your take on their balance of MMPR saturation versus other seasons and possible new seasons? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell. You can get the notifications for my videos. Awesome Writer, signing out.